let me just, we have certain words we use a lot in this field: conscious mind, unconscious or subconscious, depending on your preference. Filters. You've heard us talk about bypassing the critical faculty, that our mind is filtering information. So I like to, like I said, simplify things when possible. And this is a silly little chart. I probably made this 25 years ago, maybe more. But it works for me, and it's evolved. I change it a little bit every now and then. And y'all can see that, yes? Okay. Conscious mind and unconscious mind. And you got the funny little guy here looking to the left. And in the middle, there's a strange streak of stuff. And I say, that's the filters. That is, and again, this is all just metaphorical and symbolic. It's not like some people will say the conscious mind is left brain, right brain is unconscious, and creative mind. And there's a lot of different, ways to represent all of this. So just take this as a way to explain it, because our mind is always, always there. It's not like when we go to sleep, our conscious mind definitely drifts off and isn't doing as much. But it's not like our mind it's not like we have different minds. It's all the same mind. And our instinctive consciousness is always, always available to us. But in this chart, for purposes of explaining hypnosis and what we're dealing with, the conscious mind analyzes, judges, critiques, makes decisions, and sets goals. And it's doing that once we become aware and realize we're a person who can do all of that, that it's doing that based on the input from the outside world there on the left, through all of our senses. So what we see, hear, smell, taste, feel, touch, sense, the events, the pictures, the sounds, the people, the tastes, the feelings, all of that stuff. And it's sorting the input, because like I said, there's billions of bits of input of information coming in. And these days, there's a lot of information coming at us from a lot of sources. And the conscious mind can only focus again on, just a little bit. So in order to be able to function and not be overloaded all the time from all that input, there are these filters represented in this diagram as that strip between the red conscious mind and the blue unconscious mind. And so these filters, what they do is they evaluate, they compare, and I think I might add that to this because that's what's missing. Compares, contrasts, rejects or accepts as true. It evaluates the input and it sorts it based on what's already programmed in. We'll talk about that part in a second. But the filters are there to reject or accept, to delete, distort, generalize, all that stuff, so that you don't get overloaded at the conscious level. So most of the input is being deleted because you really don't need to pay attention to every leaf on that tree outside my window. I would just go off in trance and be there all day, right? So most of what I'm observing visually is not really helpful for what I need right now. Most of what I'm hearing isn't necessary. Those things just get deleted instantly through the filters. Based on what you're doing right now and what you're focused on and what you're working on or whatever, or wanting to learn, your conscious mind, your filters are going to focus from that input. And again, delete. It'll distort certain things sometimes to make it fit your belief systems or to make it understandable. It'll generalize things based on, well, that's kind of like this other thing, or I can compare that to something I have that I can relate to, and that makes sense to me now. But it does all this in a split second, in the blink of an eye, in a nanosecond, as Tom Peters would say. And it does that so instantly. And those filters, then most of what's coming in just gets dumped. And what is allowed and accepted in comes into then the unconscious on the right side part of the mind and adds to what's already there. So what's already there? First of all, it takes all those words and that input and the smells and tastes and all that, and it makes internal representations. and connects it to the emotions. Remember, I said the unconscious is the seat of emotions. So the unconscious mind is going to connect the representation, the imagination, the unconscious creative mind makes out of whatever it lets in. And it's going to connect it to an emotion. So there'll be an emotional response to whatever the impression, the representation is of what just got let through. We call them IRs in hypnosis and NLP. They'll say, oh, you just gave me a negative IR. That means somebody just said something that put a really ugly image into your mind that you didn't have a minute ago. And now that it's there, great. Now I got to deal with it. Right now I got to figure out how to get that out of my head. You ever like get a song stuck in your head, where you end up hearing yourself humming it all day long? I have that happen to me. And sometimes it'll be a song. I don't even like the song and I'll hear myself humming it and I go, why am I humming that? Or it's from a commercial. I happen to walk through the room when a commercial was playing because they're playing all the old 70s songs that I used to like on commercials nowadays, right? Because they know we're getting older. Anyway, so internal representation is built again on that comparing, contrasting, generalizing, and connecting it to stuff you're aware of to make sense out of it. And then the emotional connection to it. The filtered information then is stored along with whatever was already there at the unconscious level of mind. And that is where the imagination, again, the creative intelligence, the physical intelligence, that blueprint that Art was talking about, it has in the DNA and the cells and the inner intelligence of the physical body. It's got like a blueprint of how this is supposed to work, so to speak. It has also stored every experience you've ever had in your entire human existence. All the memories that you've long forgotten, they're still stored there. Anything you experienced had some kind of a impact at the unconscious level. Anything you've been taught since you got a mind of your own, and even before you were programmed, before you got a mind of your own, they say up until about age 3 or 4, we're in deep hypnosis, where our brainwave state is theta level, which in the hypnosis world means you're in deep hypnosis. You're just an open vessel. Program me, condition me. You can get children to learn 3 languages at the same time, I'm told, when they're in that theta to alpha, which is the next stage they go to till about, most people think it's around age 5, 6, 7 years, 7, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. You get into beta consciousness now, where you have a mind of your own. Up until then, you're pretty much walking around in hypnosis, getting conditioned, mimicking people, imitating people, taking on beliefs and self-descriptions and everything. So whatever you were taught and your adopted, your accepted values, all of that's in there at the unconscious level up to now. Whatever you have accepted as a belief up to now is stored. And your automated actions, which you're on automatic a lot of the day. Some people say 85% of the day. I think it's actually more than that. The things we do without having to think consciously about it are a lot of stuff that we don't think about it. We just do it, right? So all of those automated responses and behaviors and habits and all of that, they're all working from whatever your current belief systems are. The unconscious has to act based on what you currently believe. So, and it can't tell you if it's not accurate or not necessarily. If you decide to believe something, then it's going to have to act as if it's true. So whatever the accepted beliefs you have for now, there was a time in the old century, or before even the last one, when people thought the world was flat and everybody agreed pretty much. And when a few people started looking at the stars and the way the cycles of the galaxy and the moon and the sun and started speculating, I'm not so sure this is a flat place here, they would get in lots of trouble from what I understand. So, beliefs aren't always accurate. Like the periodontist who told me he believed you have to use anesthesia to control the bleeding. That obviously wasn't true. So accepted beliefs, your mind acts on them as if they are absolutely rock solid true. And the most powerful beliefs your unconscious mind is acting on every minute of every day are the beliefs we call that you hold at the level of identity. And we have touched on that already in this training a couple times. Those identity beliefs, those beliefs about who I am. So if there's a belief that got somehow stuck in there, that I'm not worthy, I don't deserve happiness or something like that, that is going to color that person's whole life from behind the scenes in some ways. Some may be obvious, some may be subtle, but it's going to color everything, every choice they make and everything that they respond to. So the most powerful beliefs you have are the self-descriptions, the level of identity beliefs. All of these things now on this chart that are at the unconscious level, again, every moment of every day, and this is all happening all at the same time, is reinforcing anything that's let in and adds to this, is reinforcing those filters. So the beliefs that keep getting more data to corroborate your beliefs, those filters really aren't going to let anything in that doesn't match up to it. Nothing is allowed in that doesn't match the beliefs that are held. So those filters get reinforced. And another way they get reinforced is through the internal dialogue, our self-talk. So what people are thinking inside of their head and what you hear come out of their mouth is going to give you clues about what is stored at the unconscious level in the form of beliefs or accepted morals or values and those kind of things. And one day I was doing this on the whiteboard at my office, and I was making that loop and saying the unconscious, what's stored at the unconscious level reinforces the filters, creates the internal dialogue, and the most powerful beliefs are the identity beliefs. And all of a sudden, I saw that those words internal dialogue and that those letters ID jumped out at me. And I said, isn't that interesting? Our internal dialogue is matching what's already trained in about who we believe we are at the unconscious level. And that keeps reinforcing the filters, which means it's reinforcing that belief. So one of my discoveries when I first started practicing hypnosis way back when was because they were kind of not talking much about conscious. They were always saying, get them in hypnosis. Here's how you get them deeper, get them in hypnosis, get them in hypnosis, and then talk to their unconscious mind. But what I started noticing right away with clients and what I had done with myself through the years with the self-hypnosis, I'm thinking, wait a minute now, that conscious mind is pretty darn important. If that conscious logical part of the mind isn't on board, then, you might get some good results talking to their unconscious mind. But if the conscious mind isn't matching up and going and, supporting what's going on at the unconscious level, then you might have a little bit more of a challenge with getting the whole mind responding the way you want it to. So I thought, well, internal dialogue, when the person is going around about their day and they don't have time to sit and do a self-hypnosis session, the internal dialogue that they're speaking to themselves in their head, or when they're conversing with other people and saying, I'm just the kind of person that, every time I lose 10 pounds, I gain 20, that they start, I'm thinking it might be useful if they start to become aware of that internal dialogue. And if it's internal in their head talking to themselves, you're going to hear it come out of their mouth at some point during the session. And that probably means they also say that to other people. If they make a statement like that and they're coming to you for weight loss, and they say, every time I lose 10 pounds, I gain 20. Every time, happens every time. That's their internal dialogue that is reinforcing an identity belief that says, I can't lose weight. It's a belief of, I'm going to gain double back. If I lose, it's just going to come back double. So it occurred to me, one thing we can do with clients is get their conscious mind on board. And while we're working with them at the unconscious level, we can ask it to do something, and it can really multitask. So we can give it a lot of things to do, as long as it's for the same outcome, when we're doing the hypnosis, that we can ask their unconscious mind to allow this person to be more aware, bring it to their attention the next time you hear them say, every time I lose weight, I gain 20 back, 10 pounds, I gain 20 back, right? If that's a statement you've heard them say it more than once or something. So or to be aware of anything that doesn't fit their goal, you can frame it that way. Anything that comes into their head or out of their mouth that isn't in line with what they're working on, the goal, the intention, that their unconscious will alert them to it. And you can do things in hypnosis to set that so that they become more aware when that pops in their head. And they might not be aware until it's already there, but at least then you can start interrupting patterns. So it occurred to me, we can start helping clients to interrupt the internal dialogue, which will also start allowing for that little bit of change loop to start happening. So that now they know that they've been saying that probably most of their life or for a long time. Now that they're aware of it and they start catching it, they can replace it on a conscious level with a different statement. Every time they hear it come in their head or out of their mouth, they can just keep replacing it, and it will start filtering through, and eventually it'll start changing the self-talk as well as the identity starts to shift. You know, I've always been that way. Every time I would lose weight in the past, in the past, it's true. Every time I lost weight in the past, I'd lose 10 pounds, I'd gain 20. Yes, that's a true statement. That's why it's a belief. People have beliefs because they believe they're true. Again, if it's in conflict with the goal, we know we got to deal with those beliefs. I always think that first session, part of the most important thing I'm doing is shaking up some of their beliefs, and that includes their identity. Because if it doesn't shift, then nothing's going to change. If it doesn't change at the unconscious level, it's going to be temporary or not at all. So changing that internal dialogue and doing it on a conscious level can start to reinforce some things. And we'll talk about the language of it, how you can change a statement so that the unconscious is also getting some little self-hypnosis in that moment with your eyes open, where the person says, oh, I just realized I said that to my friend again. You know what? In the past, it's true. Every time I lost 10 pounds, I gained 20 back. In the past is the magical words for the unconscious to keep hearing you say in that case. And if they say that over and over and over and over again, in the past, that's true. That's what always used to happen. Now their unconscious is hearing you say over and over, that's the way it used to be. I want that to be in the past. Now I'm changing my strategies so that I can achieve a healthy weight and stay there, or farm some little thing to replace that is in line with the goal. But it has to, I think the word now has to be there, because now you're telling your mind, that's the way it used to be. So please get out of the habit of saying that in my head. Now I'm learning how to be this way, or now I'm in the process of changing things so that I can make this a permanent goal, you know, that when I reach it, I'll stay there. We'll talk more about the language later, but the whole idea is that internal dialogue keeps reinforcing the current identity. And you can incorporate those kinds of things to help them start to change the way they see themselves, the way they think about themselves. Because again, they're never going to change. Their mind will not let them change as long as they have that belief and that self-description that is supported by those kinds of statements. So anyway, did that make sense? Hopefully. Yeah. So this is simple, but it really is. And I am going to add, you know, distorting, delete, distort, and generalize. That's what the filters are doing. It's deleting, it's distorting, it's generalizing, comparing, contrasting, and all of that. And then it lets through only what it thinks is relevant based on what's going on. It does talk about the two ways to cause the unconscious mind to be dominant, which is what we mean when we say bypassing the critical faculty. When we're wanting to put someone into a hypnotic experience and guide them there, we want to make the conscious mind be less dominant and the creative unconscious mind to come forward to be more prominent in their experience. So two ways that happens. One way is accidentally. People go instantly into that state of deep hypnosis, if you will, that we would call that, through extreme stress, anxiety, fear, panic, shock, or depression. Right? People can go into a hypnotic brainwave state with the unconscious emotional mind prominent through trauma. It creates instant hypnosis. Phobias are formed usually in a single event learning, they call it in psychology, usually because of a little trauma that scared them so badly that they have an instant phobia now of whatever. Again, the mind was comparing, contrasting, connecting it to something emotionally, so that now just the thought of getting in an elevator, forget about it. I'm never going, because your mind is trying to protect you. So that's one way to get hypnotized instantly. It didn't take repetition, for however many days to keep repeating something before, oh, now I can't get near an elevator. It happens instantly, accidentally sometimes. But intentional hypnosis we can do either guided by someone or a recording or with self-hypnosis. So we can do all of these same effects, and changes can happen sometimes that quickly with intentional hypnosis. So anyway, I'm not going to read that to you because you can read that when you get it. It'll be another little piece you can read a little bit more to remind you when you look at it and read it. And by the way, any handouts, because you're going to get a whole lot of stuff. You're going to get articles, you're going to get scripts, you're going to get little things like that, little charts and graphs. My recommendation is that within 3 days or so of the weekend, that you just quickly just review it. Just take 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, whatever you have, and just review it quickly. Because what you're doing now is you're bringing it back before it's too far away, and your creative unconscious, knowing why you're doing this class and everything, it will start to re-imprint some of the key things about that are important for you. And again, a lot of these things are going to be touched on at different times in the training. And the more your mind is touched on it, and it makes a little marker and says, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, that, oh, there's another piece to add to that. And it imprints it at the unconscious level more deeply, making it more available for you. Because repetition is another way to get hypnotized. It's kind of doing it the long way, but why not use whatever's available? Whatever works is my attitude is. Can't hurt, might help. Let's give it a shot and use everything we got. Throw everything at it. Any questions on any of that little chart or the conscious? Because one of the things we're going to talk about is about in the pre-talk, explaining in a cohesive way for the client and whatever's relevant for what they're there for, about what you're about. And what we are about is connecting with their inner mind, if you want to call it subconscious, I call it unconscious, but to be able to explain it to them so they understand. That's why this is different than talk therapy. That's why the rapport and the trust and all of that is so important with this work, because it's a very intimate, very personal interaction. And that person has to really have a lot of trust and feel, safe to tell you whatever is going on, right? It's a very intimate relationship mentally. What is hypnosis? I asked you guys about that. I like to explain it to the clients in a way that, like Art was kind of talking about. We want them to be comfortable with it. The pre-talk is an opportunity to really build rapport and trust. And that means I want them to think this is the most natural, normal thing. You do it all the time. You may not call it hypnosis, but it's just, it's a process that we learn as hypnotherapists that allows you to access and communicate with the higher faculties, with the whatever, depending on the client again, with the inner intelligence of your mind body. If it's someone who's there that has the word spiritual or soul or those kind of things, you can incorporate all of these ideas, because it's about the concept. The words are just things human put on them anyway. It's all about energy. It's all about their essence, their true self, their inner soul, spirit, whatever words whatever the person use, we want to step into their world a little bit, but there's ways to explain it where it's just normal and natural for them. And we're just going to be doing it at a higher level of efficiency on purpose for some important outcome that they are coming to you for help with. And the more important, the more motivated the person is, the more important that goal is for the client. And the more comfortable they are with you, I always tell my clients that's the two things that are essential, in my opinion, which is the only one I can give you. In my opinion, the two essentials for hypnotherapy to be really powerfully successful is the motivation level of the client, which I can't give them. So I always make sure my clients are highly motivated. I've sent people away or sent them to other hypnotists, referred them to someone if I felt like I didn't think they were going to, do their part. I can't do their part.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't happen often, but once in a while I just get a sense this person wants somebody to fix them. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to do anything. They just want you to zap me and make it go away or whatever. And that's just not what this is. So that motivation to me has to be there. And later when I'm talking about the smoking and the weight programs, I'll show you how I get to that, how my pre-talk covers that in a way that I feel comfortable with. I almost make some people, if they're wavering by that point, I almost make them convince me that they really want this thing they're coming to me for. And my comment to them is always, I can't want it for you more than you want it for yourself. That doesn't even make any sense, And I'll say, why spend time and money with me when you're telling me it's only this important? Why even bother, So I want their motivation to be high because that makes my job easier, makes the results better. And the other thing I tell them that's essential is their comfort level with me, that they feel comfortable and trust me. Those two things in place, I think you can get past any other thing that comes up in a session. If those two things are in place, I really believe you can help them get where they want to be. Yeah, Art, please.
I'd like to just talk a little bit about something that as hypnotists we run into, and this is critical factor. From what I understand, we don't have a critical factor until we're 8 or 9 years old. And the critical factor is the guardian of your unconscious. It is the gatekeeper. And its rule is, unless this is true, whatever I'm hearing, unless it's true right now, it's not getting in here. It might be true tomorrow or the next week or next month, well, that's fine, we'll deal with it then. But right now, it's not getting in because it's not true right now. Well, as a hypnotist, most people are coming to you because they want to change something, and they want to change it right now. They don't want to change it a year from now. And so that means there's a part of them, part of their conscious mind, that is going to get in the way of that. And so part of what we're doing when we induce a trance is that we put the conscious mind into a meditative state, or we give it something to do so that it doesn't have time to deal with what we're doing unconsciously. So I have 3 or 4 different techniques that I use to do that, because I know that unless that critical factor is removed, it's going to block everything that I'm trying to do, because I'm going to tell them that something's true and it's not true right now. I want to lose weight. Okay, you now weigh 50 pounds. Okay, well, it's not true right now, so it ain't getting in. Well, what happened when we were born and people would see us and they'd say, oh, you're a cute little boy. And you'd say, I'm a girl. Well, that means that there's a part of you that knew the difference, but there's a lot of you that you don't know anything about because you're 1 or 2 or 3 years old, and they say, oh, you're big for your age. Oh, I didn't know that. All right, I'm going to make a note of that. I'm big for my age. Or you're very coordinated, or you're pretty clumsy, or you're ugly, or you're smart, or whatever it is. We make notes of that, and that is our identity, because we don't know who we are except the people who are wise, that adults out there that are looking at us and giving us information that we don't have. So all we can do is just make notes. Now that becomes our identity. So part of your job as a hypnotist is going to be to help the people get rid of a lot of that crap that was put in there before they had an active part of their self, this critical factor that would take care of them. And so now we could say, oh, blondes are dumb, blondes are dumb, blondes are dumb. Well, Angela probably would not agree with that. She has a critical factor, and it says, that's not true. I'm smart, and I know a lot of smart blondes, So but back before that we didn't know. So, oh, I'm blonde. So I guess that must mean I'm dumb, and we take it just as that's gospel. That we just write it down. That's a rule. And until later, if we get to examine some of those things and realize I've been operating off of something that was put into me when I was 3 years old and I didn't get a vote on it. And it's been in control of my life for the last 40 years. And it needs to go, we need to get rid of that. So part of your wonderful results you can produce as a hypnotist is to help people get rid of some of the junk that was put into their identity before they got a vote on it. And I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that you've got a part of you that you've got to neutralize it, because it'll block everything you're doing, because you're talking about things the way they're going to be, but they're not there yet. And that's critical factor wants truth today, right now. That's this rule. So.
And that was a great explanation of why in the books that you read on hypnosis and the trainings that they say you've got to bypass critical faculty. And that also are, that's emblematic of why talk therapy doesn't do as well as hypnotherapy.
Right.
Because talk therapy is talking to that critical faculty. It's talking to the conscious part of the mind. And in hypnosis, again, we use language that allows the person to feel comfortable enough with us, because someone has to feel safe and comfortable to be that vulnerable, to open up that, because that critical faculty is there to, in many ways, to protect them, to keep them from letting junk in anymore.
It's a good thing we have one. I call it our gullibility protector. That keeps us from being gullible and buying swampland in Florida and things like that.
And like I said, it judges, it makes decisions, it sets goals for us.
Yeah.
And that judgment is not a bad thing. It's everything. It depends on the context, right? Like we don't want to judge our clients or any of that stuff, but discernment is something that we cultivate as adults through experience. That filter helps us to discern, I'm going to go here instead of there. I'm going to kind of avoid that person because they're toxic, and I'm going to hang out with these people because they're uplifting. And, whatever that judgment and discernment, that critical faculty is a good thing. The only thing it isn't helpful for is when it's blocking out information that can help whatever, like Art was saying, something that isn't working for the person anymore, that got stored there for whatever reason, as a child or as an adult, having a phobic response to some, having a traumatic event that they can't seem to shake some after emotional, impact from. That's when that critical faculty is protecting that change. That's when there's a part of that person I just trust too, that understands we've got to change it at that unconscious level. We have to change it at the source, in other words. We got to get some new information in so that belief system can have a new perspective on that event. If it was from childhood, who was it? Ted James, one of the people I studied with, said it's never too late to have a happy childhood, right? That you can go back as an adult in the hypnotic state, knowing you're safe and everything, and you can reevaluate a moment where it got stuck in there. You'll never amount to anything. Let's say that got stuck in there somehow. And somehow it's the unconscious knows if it's there. The conscious mind may or may not know that they feel that way. But if that's what's limiting them from the goal they want, from succeeding, the unconscious knows it. And the filters, again, are meant to protect. So there's a part of the consciousness that knows this isn't accurate. Again, I think of the unconscious being that higher faculty that knows everything you brought into the world, some of which we may never discover or tap into, even stuff that we brought that we aren't even aware of. Who was it? The grandma Moses, the painter, that she was 100, I think, when she started painting and became this famous painter. She didn't even know she could paint, right? I don't know if I got that right, but it's close to that true story. But there's people that go through their whole life and have things probably they don't realize they have. But our unconscious, I trust it knows what that person's capable of. what they have inside of them, that if they get rid of this mistaken belief or this limiting thing that got stuck in there by the outside world somehow, that they can now flourish, that they can meet their inborn, and with their decisions in life, they've made their goals. So it's at that point, I think the unconscious helps that person to find a way to trust someone enough to let go and let's get this taken care of. This isn't healthy. If they have a limiting belief about themselves, especially at the level of identity, and it's always involved with anything that's going on, even if somebody has an illness, a diagnosis for a horrible illness that just started a month ago, their identity today is affected dramatically from what it was before they got that diagnosis. They think of themselves completely differently once that's there, so it's always a part of it. That's why I said I think the beliefs in a first session for anyone, no matter what it is, if it's nail biting or if it's cancer or if it's smoking or whatever, I think the belief systems are really relevant and important to start shaking up and let the unconscious. And that's why I think it will bring forth stuff that they sometimes didn't even know. Have that happen in sessions where all of a sudden they come out of hypnosis and they go, I just realized something. I love to hear those words.
Yeah.
I just realized something. Those are good words to hear.
That's right.
And sometimes they don't know how they got it or what it meant, but they know they just realized something that's relevant and they feel it. Again, the unconscious is the emotion part of the mind. So if it feels good, then it was something really important that they may or may not consciously have a complete understanding about. So it's all good. Nothing bad can happen in hypnosis. I just don't believe that. So I have to be careful when we get to the part where I have to teach about abreactions. I kind of joke to my students. I say, the only thing I really have an abreaction about is having to talk about abreactions in my hypnosis training. So I guess I could work on that with hypnosis. And I'm fine with it, actually. I just give you my opinion and take it for what it's worth. But my personal opinion is I don't believe in abreactions. I call it something different than, it can be the same thing, the same reaction, but I have a different perspective on it. Any questions? Throwing a lot at you today. We're covering a lot of bases. So remember the contract at the beginning. And I like I said, I think it's a nice idea when you start a longer training like this to keep once in a while, remind yourself that, even if you're not quite sure why we were doing certain things in this training, or what's something that you heard maybe doesn't quite mesh or make sense, or even agree with certain things that you already have in there, that it's okay, because your mind isn't going to take in anything that isn't going to make you better at what you do, more successful, happier, healthier, all of that. So let everything come in and kind of swim around, let it just incubate a little bit, and your inner intelligence, that higher intelligence that I really respect, that knows what you need and what's good for you and right for you and for your clients, it'll process it and keep what's useful. And there might be some stuff it just says, okay, we can let the rest of it go. Or store it back there just in case later it might make sense to pull that out again or something. But I think it's nice to just let it all wash over you for this training. And again, give your logical part of your mind, your judgmental part of your mind, the respect it deserves. And if it has an opinion, say, I really love that you want to give me your opinion, and you have to wait until 2 weeks after the training. Then you can tell me all about it. I just think that helps to keep that chatter that can sometimes put the filters back up and not let stuff in. Sometimes it doesn't matter if I know. What was it you said earlier, Robin? I love that statement. It lets you know what you didn't know you knew, or what I love what, I don't remember it, but I remember what it felt like when you said it. It was like, yeah. Sometimes we don't even know what we're learning until later when it shows up and we go, oh, look what I just did. I wonder where I learned that. And you may or may not know, it doesn't matter. Just let it go in and see what happens. I'm just going to do this quickly because it'll fit in the time slot. Okay, this is the IACT website, because since we just have a few minutes, might as well introduce you to this. This is the organization that Robert Otto, one of them, This is the International Association of Counselors and Therapists, which you will have a nice, beautiful certificate from, one of your 3. This is the homepage for it. You will be typing in your username and your password. And voila, you will be in the system. Now, I'm a trainer, so there's a few little things that are different on mine, but some are the same. The virtual library I mentioned, I'll tell you what, if you go to the virtual library and look up Unlimited Human magazine, look at all these, they're quarterly, so 4 times a year, that magazine comes out. And it has, I don't even know how many. I'll open one just so you can get an idea. This one just came out, the fall, Unlimited Human. You can go through there and read. These articles are a whole education in itself. So here's the current one. You can see timely articles by this whole list. Look at the list. All of these people have articles on a bunch of different stuff in here. Oh, gee, look, Patricia Scott. How about that? There's Robert Otto. He's the CEO. You've got this guy who's a real stage hypnotist guy that I think he's cool as anything. I brought him in to speak at our Hypnosis Education Association when I was president. Pretty sure he's in Florida. He's a really cool guy. He self-proclaimed his name. He gave himself the title, the fastest hypnotist in the world. So, you know, you can give yourself titles if you want, but he's really a cool guy, and he's quite talented at the quick inductions and stuff. Mind Your Own Business, Mark Babineau, he does an article every quarter. He is the one that did the videos and is in charge of ethics for the International Association of Counselors and Therapists. He's the head of the ethics committee. And the videos that you will be either watching or reading the manual you have to take an exam to pass the ethics exam by the end of this. I've known him the whole time I've been in the field. He's from Louisiana. He's a Cajun.
I say he is an attorney.
And he's an attorney. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, has a law practice.
Yeah. Hypnosis for Insomnia, toolboxes. Peter Blum, he's our hippie from Woodstock, New York. Really cool guy. He does the Tibetan bowls, a lot of sound therapy, and he's a wonderful hypnotherapist. I have some of his teaching videos, and he's great. His language, he's very hypnotic. Remembering and forgetting, subconscious mind. Here's why I still need to be editor. That's Will Horton. He's in Florida. He's the NLP guy I was talking about. He has an article every month. There's Roy Hunter. He does an article every month still. Where is mine? This guy I just met, he just started contributing. I met him at the conference the last 2 years. He is a dental surgeon and a practitioner with a passion for medical hypnosis, which has got our conversation going. And he does hypnosis with his dental patients. How cool is that? This is one of my more serious research articles I did. Deeper Understanding of Imagery in the Health Professions, Part 2. I did one about a year ago. I think it was fall of 24. I did the first one, and then I realized I never did Part 2. So here's Part 2, a year later. There's one on immunity, dreaming into hypnosis. So you can see there's a lot of variety there. All those magazines, you can get all kinds of education, free education, reading those when you become a member. Hypnosis articles library. So these are all scripts with different titles. Gratitude, I think I've got one under gratitude. Oh, I've got 2 under gratitude. There you go. Gee, I'm surprised there aren't more there. That surprises me. These are great scripts, by the way, because I happen to know her and she really writes good scripts. Find a practitioner. So once you're certified, you will submit your materials, and then people can look you up in here and they'll find you on their website and on my website, by the way. I have a whole page for associates, which most people don't send me their stuff, but Michael Watson gets found there. I've got a couple of people that aren't even members of my group anymore, and they still tell me, people call them from finding them on my website. The more places you can be listed, the more opportunity people will have if they type your name in and Google it, that your name will pop up more often that way. Mind Matters Forum, I mentioned earlier. This is the last thing I'll show you because it's time to quit. This is a forum, an open forum. So you can, there's all kinds of things that IMDHA and IACT post, just different things, announcements and things. Sometimes they post articles or research or new studies that have come out. The open forum for members, and then members' activities and events. I always put my monthly free webinar on there, and you will be a part of it, and you will be a professional associate once you're out of here. But in the meantime, the student membership has really got a lot of good stuff. And there's, like I said, a lot of free other venues for learning things and for getting some additional training from people from all over the world now. I mean, I kind of envy people in the field now coming up through this, because, you know, Art, you and I used to have to travel all over the place just to get a class in something, you know. We're such dinosaurs, aren't we? But you know what? The people that taught me, even less availability. They had to read books. They couldn't even travel to go see somebody, probably. They had to get it from books and things. So have a great evening. If I was you, I would anticipate really sleeping well tonight, because you've got a lot in your conscious mind, kind of. And you know what? I do a whole thing. I have a whole thing about sleep learning that I started back before I started doing this professionally. So I incorporated it into my trainings. And I have some videos out there on sleep learning too on YouTube. But there's something I created called psychoneural regeneration. And it's about using your sleep to activate cellular activity, to rejuvenate your cells, to do what Art was talking about, talking to the cells. It's like sending you off through the hypnotic brainwave states as you go to sleep with an intention, just like when you're going into self-hypnosis. Because whatever you're focused on and thinking about and sending your mind to sleep with, it's going to keep processing. And you don't want to be watching the news right before you go to sleep, probably, because you don't want your mind focused on that all night while you're sleeping. You might have some really interesting dreams that you wish you didn't have. By the way, I sent you all a manual, and it is the current, and it's constantly evolving and changing. They finally sent me a Word document and gave us all permission as trainers to edit and add to it. Thank you, Lord. I've been asking for years. There have been typos in that. I don't even use it for the class. I give it to you as a separate training manual that you can read on your own. And then I give you all my stuff, a lot of which is about some of the same topics and things, but it's different. And they give us that permission. But now I'm going to start adding to that one. But I only got it like 3 days before this class started. So I added like 2 or 3 things at the back of it. I think I did put the Florida statute in there for those of you who are interested in looking it over. I'll probably show it tomorrow at some point, and we'll talk a little bit about it. So have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow for more fun. We're going to do some interactive stuff tomorrow. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Have a good evening.
Bye. Good night.
Tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.